So a new person has decided to join your table and try Dungeons and Dragons for the first time. This is a true honor to be able to show someone the path to this great game. What do you show them? What do you show them first? How much detail do you go in? What level should they be? Feeling a bit overwhelmed? No worries. We've got you this week on We Talk D&D. Let's go! Hello, Griffin family. Welcome back to We Talk D&D. My name is Ryan, and I am your dungeon mentor through your Dungeons and Dragons journey. If you're looking for ideas to engage and inspire you as players and dungeon masters, be sure to hit the subscribe button so you don't miss a single part of our journey. Last week, we looked at introducing people to the main idea of Dungeons and Dragons. I will link that video below in the description. We discussed how getting players to understand that it's about creating an epic style story as a group is super important. Also, I'd like to add that D&D isn't a normal game. There's no way to win D&D. You can certainly have winning and, well, of course, losing moments, but you'll never truly win Dungeons and Dragons. So let's go over what you will need in two phases. First, what to do before the new player arrives at the table, and second, well, what to do when they're sitting down. Some people think a one-shot is a good idea for introducing someone to Dungeons and Dragons. It's an interesting choice, but I caution this approach, in that roleplay tends to not be as much of a focus, and the game becomes mostly dice dependent at that point. I suggest having the player go through the character creation process as described in the character creation videos linked also, well, of course, in the description. If a new player decides, well, it's not for them, the Dungeon Master can always work the player character back out of the story. I believe that most people enjoy playing Dungeons and Dragons once they've had a chance to get a feel for the game we love. So while the expectation for the new person isn't a multi-year commitment, the hope is for continued play. The character creation process for the new player could, well, I guess I should say should, be aided by a dungeon master or an experienced player. There are a few limits and things like that that might be good to nail down. Like, it's a first level character and they want to wield a lightsaber or hold the ring of power on day one. So, no. For the new player, a few sentence idea on the backstory is probably more than enough. They don't need to do paragraphs. So you've helped that new player make a character they think might be interesting to play. Now it's game day, and you want them to have a great experience. I suggest a few things. Make sure you have everything that they're going to need, including dice, cool ones of course, a dice tower or tray, their character sheet if they're not bringing it themselves, and have selected a mini for them to use if you're using minis. On seating, every table is set up a little different, but I'd have them sit next to the DM, bookended by an experienced player. You don't want them on the end of the table. You want them to feel like they're in the middle of all the action. The experienced player needs to be briefed on the expectations you have before they get to the table. Those expectations are 1, be helpful, and 2, don't play the new character for them. Basically, help them where their things are on their sheet and identifying which die they need to use, those kinds of things. The Dungeon Master should ask the new player what they want to do. Both the DM and that experienced player need to know that they need to let that new player think. Don't rush in. When they ask, don't just tell them to do X. Give them options. Let the new player choose their character's actions. Remember, we want this new player to feel the freedom and choice of our game. It makes it so unique. Some things will be obvious to the experienced player that are just being learned to the new player. Honestly, what's possible for the player character in Dungeons and Dragons can be overwhelming. Giving the new player options will guide them without railroading them, and we all hate railroading. The DM needs to make sure to continue to keep the balance of attention even at the table. There is a tendency to have everything be about the new player at the table. Part of the learning is watching how others play, so time out of the spotlight is just as important as time in the spotlight. Obviously, ignoring your new player is a terrible idea. Also, be sure you've prepped other players about the expectations for bringing in a new player. That new player needs to feel welcomed and not picked on in any way. Unfortunately, it happens when an existing player gets a bit of jealousy of the attention being paid to the new player. This is not the time for a player to pick on the new person in or out of the game. After your session is over, make sure there's some social hang-around time available. The real decision for that new player will be made right then and there if they're going to continue to play or not. I'd caution on asking too many questions of them at the time though. Having the players hanging around and saying, "Hey, nice to meet you," is a good thing. The person who invited the new person should ask them something open-ended, like, "So, what did you think?" More than likely, they will have a positive answer, but not be particularly long-winded. Resist the temptation to ask a bunch of your game-specific questions, like, "What's the best part?" or "Come on, you loved it, right?" The best thing you can do is tell them something like this: "Hey, you did a great job, especially if you're a new player. Well done. We'd love to have you back for the next session. What do you think?" You'll know right away. If it's a positive, they'll be happy and they'll say, "Yeah, you're great. All right, I'm happy to be back," and they'll be happy to join you again. If it's a no, that's pretty easy as well. You can say something like, "I understand. I really appreciate you giving Dungeons and Dragons a try. And hey, listen, if you ever want to try it again or if you change your mind, let me know. I'd love to have you back." Now, the hard one is when they don't give you a clear answer. So if you get a maybe, or "I'll think about it," or "Well, I have to check with my whomever," don't get frustrated. Tell them, "Hey, I understand. Let me know if you have any questions, and I hope that you can join us at the next session. Let me know, okay?" Honestly, this is probably a person who's trying to be polite and give you a no. It's okay. Give them a few days and check in, just to be sure. So that's our episode this week. I hope you got a lot out of it. I did get some requests from last week's video to post the unedited version of the scenario so that players and dungeon masters could share it. I'll get that done this week and post it as a midweek edition this Saturday. I appreciate all the love you guys shared on that video and on the channel in general. You guys are awesome. By the way, speaking of awesome, if you like these kinds of shirts, I got a link in the description to where I get them. I'll see you all next week, and as always, good luck out there.